Have you wondered if your faith truly matters? If your prayers reach beyond the sky? God says your faith has moved heaven. Every whispered prayer was heard. Every silent tear was counted. Your belief did not go unnoticed. Heaven responded to your trust. Angels moved at your faith. What you believed shifted the unseen. God says, I have seen it all. When you prayed in silence, heaven listened. When you doubted yet believed, heaven leaned in. Your faith stirred what eyes cannot see. Small prayers carried great power. Weak moments held strong belief. God honors faith, not perfection. Your trust reached beyond limits. Heaven felt your persistence. Every moment of belief mattered. Nothing was wasted. You prayed when answers delayed. You trusted when signs were few. God says that faith moved me. Heaven does not ignore sincere hearts. Your belief activated divine movement. What looked small became mighty. Faith opened unseen doors. Angels were sent on your behalf. Heaven shifted because you believed. God says, I responded. In the waiting, faith grew deeper. In the silence, trust became stronger. Heaven watches quiet believers. Your patience spoke louder than words. God says, I saw your endurance. I saw your hope remain alive. Faith sustained you when strength faded. Belief carried you forward. Heaven recognized your perseverance. Your faith made a way. When others gave up, you prayed. When fear whispered, you believed. God says that moved heaven. Faith breaks barriers unseen. Trust opens spiritual pathways. Your belief invited divine help. Heaven was never distant. Your faith drew heaven near. What you believed reshaped outcomes. God was already working. Do not underestimate your faith. Even mustard seed faith carries power. God says where small belief moves mountains. Heaven responds to sincere trust. Faith activates what logic cannot. What seemed impossible began to shift. Heaven aligned with your prayer. Divine timing was set in motion. Your faith unlocked provision. God says, I am faithful. You believe without seeing. You trusted without proof. Heaven honors such faith. Your heart spoke louder than words. Faith wrote your testimony. God says, I have not forgotten you. Heaven remembers every prayer. Your belief created movement. Faith never returns empty. It always produces fruit. Even now, heaven is moving. Your faith still speaks. God says, stay firm. What you prayed for is unfolding. Faith prepared the way. Heaven works beyond your sight. Trust holds eternal power. Your belief shapes destiny. God honors faithful hearts. Heaven responds in perfect timing. Rise today with confidence. Your faith matters. Your prayers matter. God says you are heard. Heaven is not silent. Movement has begun. Faith has opened doors. What you trusted for is coming. Heaven is aligned for you. God is working now. Do not lose hope. Keep believing. Keep trusting. God says, your faith moved heaven. What was impossible is shifting. What was delayed is aligning. Heaven responds to faith. Your belief made a difference. Trust the process. God says, your faith has moved heaven. Even when you felt unheard, heaven listened. Your quiet faith echoed loudly above. God says, I was closer than you knew. Every prayer reached my throne. Every tear spoke a language of faith. Your belief crossed every barrier. Heaven responded with purpose. Faith initiated divine movement. What you trusted for began to form. God says, I was already working. When fear surrounded you, faith stood firm. When doubt whispered, belief remained. Heaven honors steadfast hearts. Your faith held ground in the storm. God says that courage mattered. Every moment of trust shaped outcomes. Faith opened doors unseen. Angels were released to guide. Heaven moved because you believed. Your trust was powerful. Faith does not require perfection. It requires surrender. God says, your heart was sincere. Heaven responds to honesty. Your belief overcame weakness. Small faith carried great strength. Heaven noticed your persistence. Faith grows strongest in silence. Trust matured in waiting. God honored that growth. You prayed without evidence. You trusted without signs. Heaven saw your obedience. Faith moved what logic could not. God says, nothing was in vain. Every prayer altered the unseen. Faith aligned divine timing. Heaven adjusted pathways for you. What was blocked began to shift. God was arranging outcomes. Faith calls things not yet seen. Your belief spoke life. Heaven listens to faithful voices. God says, I heard every word. Faith invites divine intervention. What you trusted me with matters. Heaven values perseverance. Your patience carried weight. Faith sustained you through uncertainty. God strengthened your spirit. Even now, heaven is attentive. Your faith still speaks. God says, remain steadfast. What you prayed for is unfolding. Faith prepares the ground. Heaven works beyond sight. Trust secures divine outcomes. Your belief shaped direction. God honors faithful endurance. Heaven responds in perfect order. Do not underestimate your belief. Faith is powerful beyond measure. God says, to small faith moves heaven. What seemed delayed was designed. Heaven works with precision. Your trust was timed perfectly. Faith aligned heaven and earth. God moved behind the scenes. What you hoped for drew closer. Heaven was never distant. Faith activates divine promise. Your belief awakened purpose. God says, I am faithful to my word. Heaven responds to trust. Faith breaks spiritual resistance. Your prayer opened pathways. God saw your endurance. Heaven acknowledged your loyalty. Faith carried authority. God released favor. Rise again in confidence. Your faith matters deeply. Heaven responds to sincerity. God says, continue believing. What you trusted me for is near. Faith set things in motion. Heaven is aligning outcomes. God is still working. Your belief has impact. Faith is never wasted. Do not lose hope now. Stand firm in belief. God says, stay faithful. Heaven is moving for you. What was impossible is shifting. What was silent is awakening. Heaven responds to faith. Your trust changed things. Believe without fear. God says your faith has moved heaven. Even now, heaven is attentive to you. Your faith continues to speak. God says, I have not turned away. Every prayer still matters. Every moment of trust remains alive. Faith does not expire. Heaven remembers your belief. What you prayed is still held. Divine purpose is unfolding. God is still moving. When you feel weary, faith sustains you. When strength fades, belief stands. God says, lean on me. Heaven supports faithful hearts. Your trust anchors you in truth. Faith stabilizes the storm. What shook you did not break you. Heaven saw your endurance. Faith preserved your spirit. God strengthened you quietly. Faith calls light into darkness. Your belief shifted atmospheres. God says, heaven responded. Angels moved at your faith. What was unseen began to align. Faith opened divine channels. Heaven coordinated events. Your prayers carried authority. God honored your surrender. Heaven adjusted outcomes. You trusted when answers delayed. You believed without explanation. Heaven saw your obedience. God says that faith mattered. Every prayer reshaped timing. Faith invited divine order. Heaven refined the path. What seemed still was moving. God was arranging favor. Faith held the door open. Do not question your belief. Faith is powerful in silence. God says, remain confident. Heaven moves beyond your sight. What you trusted for is forming. Faith prepares the way forward. Heaven strengthens foundations. Your trust shaped destiny. God honors consistency. Faith builds lasting results. Faith activates promise. Your belief awakened purpose. God says, I keep my word. Heaven stands with the faithful. Faith unlocks spiritual provision. What was closed is opening. Heaven aligns with trust. Your prayer released movement. God saw your loyalty. Faith carries authority. Rise today without fear. Your faith is not forgotten. Heaven responds to sincerity. God says, continue trusting. What you believe for is near. Faith sets divine timing. Heaven works with precision. God is still arranging outcomes. Your belief has power. Faith shapes tomorrow. Do not lose heart. Faith grows in waiting. God says, stay steady. Heaven is active for you. What seemed impossible is shifting. Faith breaks resistance. Heaven honors endurance. God rewards belief. Your faith moved heaven, and heaven moved for you. Trust beyond what you see. Faith holds eternal strength. God says, I am with you. Heaven remains close. Your prayers still echo. Faith continues to work. God's promise stands firm. Heaven never forgets faith. Your belief changed things. God was listening all along. Stand firm today. Walk forward in trust. God says, do not doubt. Heaven is aligned. Faith has opened doors. What you prayed for is unfolding. Believe without fear. Heaven responds to faith. Your trust has power. God says your faith has moved heaven. Even in silence, heaven remains alert. Your faith is still active. God says, I have not forgotten you. Every promise still stands. Faith keeps heaven engaged. What you believed continues to move. Divine attention has not shifted away. Heaven remembers your trust. God is faithful to his word. Your belief still matters. When answers seem slow, faith grows deep. Waiting refines your trust. God says patience is powerful. Heaven works beyond your understanding. What feels delayed is being prepared. Faith strengthens unseen foundations. God builds quietly. Heaven aligns details carefully. God says, your faith has moved heaven.